I don't care what that ancient piece of paper says. This is my community. That's what Karen Henderson screamed at my security camera at 11:30 p.m. She wasn't just ringing the doorbell. She was hammering it with the heel of her hand, her other hand clutching the neck of a half-empty bottle of rose. The motion light cast a harsh glare on her, making her look like a cornered animal. Her expensive white blazer was ripped at the shoulder and stained with grass. Her perfect blonde manager bun was falling apart, strands of hair stuck to her face. The smell of wine and rage was so strong, I felt like I could smell it right through the sealed door. "You think this is a joke?" she yelled, her voice cracking. "You think you can embarrass me? You have 24 hours to sign the quitclaim, or my bulldozers will be turning your little shack into a parking lot. I own this town." She took a step back, stumbling on the gravel path, and hurled the wine bottle. It shattered against my 100-year-old oak tree, spraying glass and cheap wine everywhere. "You're nothing. You're a dead old man in a dead old house." Then she got in her Range Rover and tore off down the street, her tires screaming. What she didn't know, in her drunken, new money rage, was that my security camera wasn't just recording to a local drive. It was live streaming in 4K to a secure cloud server. A server I still had access to from my old job. What she didn't know was that the ancient piece of paper she was screaming about was the 1922 original county plat, signed by the governor himself. What she didn't know was that the shack she just threatened was Oakhaven Bungalow, the original, protected county landmark that served as the town's first survey office. And what she definitely didn't know was that the paper road she'd illegally paved over for her new mansion's swimming pool wasn't just a local error. It was Federal Access Route 7, a protected right-of-way I had personally confirmed and filed in the 1984 Federal Survey. Her threat to bulldoze a protected federal landmark? She had just confessed to a felony on a hot mic, and the evidence was already being duplicated in a data center 500 miles away. 72 hours earlier, I thought this was just a quiet retirement. It was Tuesday, October the 23rd, 11:47 in the morning. I stood at the entrance of the bungalow, holding a heavy, old-fashioned iron key. It carried more than just the weight of metal. It carried 40 years of service, 2 federal commendations, and the end of the largest land fraud case in the state's history. The autumn air was crisp. The smell of decaying leaves was thick and sweet. But I smelled something else, too. Something that put my trained senses on alert, even in retirement. Fresh concrete and cheap lumber. The smell of corners being cut. My name is Thomas Vance. For the last 4 decades, most people just knew me as the quiet guy at the county planning office. But the FBI's Land Fraud Division called me the cartographer. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers called me the Wall, the man they brought in when a billion-dollar developer tried to argue a new military base boundary. And the mafia-run construction crews I'd helped put away in the 90s, they just called me the Witness. This bungalow wasn't a purchase. It was a grant, a reward from the U.S. Historical Society for my testimony, which had reclaimed this very property from a ring of corrupt developers 20 years ago. They gave it to me to be its protector. The property was magnificent in its own quiet, historic way. A perfect 1920s craftsman, built from timber so old and hard you could barely hammer a nail into it. It was the last original house on a street that was quickly being demolished and replaced by soulless, gray and white McMansions. And it held the one thing that made it priceless. In the basement, in a temperature-controlled, fireproof safe, was the original linen cloth survey map of the entire county. The one all other maps were based on. The one Karen Henderson had just called an ancient piece of paper. I was examining the old property markers, small iron pins half buried in the earth, when I saw the convoy, a sterile white Range Rover leading 2 black construction trucks. They pulled up to the curb, engines purring with expensive menace. The gravel under their tires sounded like bones breaking. Each crunch a countdown. Karen Henderson stepped out. She looked like she'd been carved from surgical enhancements and entitlement. She didn't come to introduce herself. She didn't bring a welcome basket. She came to make a threat. And she had no idea she was threatening the one man who had drawn the very lines she was trying to erase. Karen Henderson stepped out of the Range Rover. The two construction trucks behind her cut their engines, and the sudden silence was heavy. This was not the drunk, unhinged woman from my security camera feed. That would come later. This was Karen Henderson, the CO. She was all sharp angles and cold, corporate polish. Her white blazer was perfect, her blonde hair pulled back so tightly it looked like it hurt. She held a sleek, leather-bound portfolio and walked onto my lawn like she was an admiral boarding a captured ship. The two large men from the truck stayed by their vehicles, their arms crossed. They weren't builders. They were security. "Mr. Vance, I presume?" she said. Her voice was smooth and polite, but had the chill of a banker's office. "I'm Karen Henderson. I'm the CEO of Henderson Development and the acting president of the estates at Oakhaven HOA. She didn't offer a hand, just got right to business. "We're so thrilled with the progress of the community," she said, gesturing to the skeletons of half-built mansions. "It's going to be the most exclusive neighborhood in the state." Which brings me to a small, clerical matter. A bit of old-town housekeeping. She opened her portfolio, revealing a glossy drawing, not a map. It showed her new houses, a golf course, and a community center. "As you can see," she said, tracing a line with a perfect, red fingernail, "our new property line gives residents a beautiful, unbroken view. Unfortunately, there's a conflict. A typo in the old county records. A paper road that technically cuts right through our new properties." She smiled, a thin, tight smile that didn't reach her eyes. "My lawyers have drawn this up," she said, pulling out a second, thicker document covered in yellow, "sign here" tabs. "It's a simple quitclaim. You just sign away your claim to that nonsense relic. In return, the HOA will waive your first year of dues, and we're even prepared to offer you $5,000 for your trouble." I looked at her glossy drawing. I looked at the legal document. Then I looked at her. "This is a very nice drawing, Mrs. Henderson," I said, my voice quiet. "Is it a map or is it marketing? The colors are very bright." Her smile flickered. She wasn't used to being questioned. "It's the new plat, Mr. Vance. The one that's been approved." "Approved by who?" I asked. "Your marketing department? Because it's missing my signature." She actually laughed. A short, sharp, "Huh. Why on earth," she said, her voice dripping with condescension, "would it need your signature?" "Because for 40 years, I said, still calm, "I was the chief land surveyor for Oakhaven County. My signature is on every official plat map filed since 1984. This is just a picture. A very expensive, very wrong picture." The smile was gone. Her eyes went cold. She had expected a simple, scared old man. She was getting something else. "That's a nice story," she said, her voice turning hard. "But you're retired. This is the new map. My lawyers have already filed it." "Then your lawyers are committing fraud," I said, not raising my voice. "You can't file a map that erases a federal right-of-way. You're not just building on a paper road. You're building on Federal Access Route 7. She scoffed, but a tiny line of panic appeared on her forehead. "The federal government? That's absurd. It's a dirt path. It's a 40-foot wide, protected thoroughfare," I said, quoting the charter from memory. "Set aside by the U.S. government in 1922 to guarantee public and military access to the 50,000 acres of state forest behind this property. You can't absorb it. You can't build on it. And you certainly can't offer me $5,000 to sign it away. It's not mine to give, Mrs. Henderson. It belongs to the people of the United States." We stood there for a long moment. The two men by the truck had uncrossed their arms. "And while your lawyers are looking that up," I continued, "you should have them search the county landmark registry." "The what?" "This bungalow," I said, patting the 100-year-old wooden rail of my porch. Oakhaven Bungalow, the original survey and mapping office for this county. It was placed on the National Register of Historic Places in 1997. It is a protected federal landmark. The one you just told your foreman, last week, that you wanted gone. I believe your words were, a useless shack. Her face went pale under her expensive makeup. She knew I was right. She had been caught. But people like Karen Henderson don't get rich by admitting defeat. Her corporate mask melted, revealing the raw, ugly rage I'd seen on my camera. You think you're clever, don't you, old man? She hissed. You think your little facts and history matter? This is the real world. Money matters. Power matters. I am the HOA, and you will follow the new rules. I always follow the rules, Mrs. Henderson, I said, taking a sip of my now cold coffee. The question is, will you? She stared at me, her chest heaving, furious, and for the first time, a little bit scared. You've just made a very powerful enemy, Mr. Vance, she said, her voice a low growl. A very, very powerful one. She spun on her heel and marched back to her Range Rover. We'll see how long your rules protect you, she yelled from her car window. When the HOA starts fining you $500 a day for that unapproved, historic paint color, you'll sign. They all sign eventually. She sped off, her convoy of black trucks following her like pilot fish on a shark. I watched them go. She was wrong. I wouldn't sign. This was my home, but more than that, it was my map. I had drawn the lines. I had protected them from corporate raiders, con men, and corrupt politicians for my entire career. I wasn't just a retired old man. I was the cartographer. And Karen Henderson had just declared war on the one man who had drawn the entire battlefield. Karen Henderson's Range Rover and her trucks disappeared, leaving a cloud of dust. The quiet of my street returned, but it was a different quiet now. It was the calm before a storm. She had said, "You've just made a very powerful enemy." I thought about the crooked politicians and mafia bosses who had said similar things over the years. The only difference was their choice of weapon. Criminals used guns. Karen Henderson used paperwork. I went inside and found my old binder, Vance, T. Adversarial Property Disputes. It had been a long time since I'd needed it. I pulled out a fresh legal pad and sharpened a pencil. The game had begun. The next morning, the war of the mailbox officially started. I walked out to get my newspaper. There, stuck to my mailbox with bright red duct tape, was an official-looking notice from the estates at Oakhaven Homeowners Association. Violation: improper mailbox height. Unauthorized material. Requirement: mailboxes must be 42 inches high and made of wrought iron. Wood is prohibited. Fine: $500 per day until corrected. My mailbox was made of sturdy cedar, hand-built by my father in 1965. It had been 48 inches high for 58 years, long before any estates at Oakhaven existed. I carefully peeled off the notice. Every petty violation was evidence. I measured the mailbox. Exactly 48 inches. I pulled out my digital camera and took a dozen photos from every angle, documenting the date and time. Then I wrote a polite, formal letter to the HOA. Subject: regarding violation notice #EO 7.3B1024 MV to the HOA board. This letter serves as a formal dispute. My mailbox, constructed in 1965, predates your HOA by decades. Furthermore, its 48-inch height complies with all United States Postal Service regulations. Your internal code does not supersede federal law. Please provide documentation proving your jurisdiction over my mailbox. Until then, I consider this notice invalid. Sincerely, Thomas Vance. I put a copy in my binder. I knew it wouldn't stop her. This was just the first shot. The next afternoon, a different notice was taped to my front door. Violation: non-conforming exterior paint color. Requirement: all exteriors must adhere to the HOA's approved palette of neutral earth tones. Your forest green is prohibited. Fine, $500 per day until corrected. My house wasn't forest green. It was a subtle, faded sage green. The original 1922 color blended perfectly with the woods. Karen's palette was just shades of beige and gray. I went through the same routine, photos and another formal letter. Subject: regarding violation notice #EO 4.1C 1025 PC to the HOA board. This is a formal dispute. My property, Oakhaven Bungalow No. 1, is a federally recognized historic landmark, listed on the National Register of Historic Places since 1997. Its exterior color is part of its historic preservation status. Your HOA cannot demand alterations to a federally protected landmark. Sincerely, Thomas Vance. I knew this would hit her hard. She might not care about history, but federal law was a different beast. Still, she wouldn't back down. Not yet. On the third morning, things escalated. I was on my porch when a heavy-duty tow truck pulled up. A burly man in greasy overalls climbed out. "Morning," he grunted. "Got a call about an inoperable vehicle. HOA says it's abandoned." He pointed at my pickup truck. It was an old Ford Ranger. It had dents, but it was functional. I drove it every day. It was parked in my driveway. "Inoperable?" I asked, my voice calm. "I just drove it this morning. And it's on my private property." The driver avoided my eyes. HOA President Henderson specifically called it in. Said it was an eyesore, and she had the authority. "Look, buddy," he lowered his voice. "I just do what I'm told. They're paying double rates for this." "I understand," I said. "But you will not be touching my truck. If you do, that will be grand theft auto, on video, on a federally protected property. I'll have you and your company sued so fast your tires will spin off." He looked at me sharply. The calm way I said federally protected property made him pause. He was used to old folks yelling, not quiet authority. "Federal, huh?" he muttered. He pulled out his phone. "Let me just check with dispatch." He walked away, talking into his phone. I heard him say, "Yeah, she's insisting, but the guy's talking federal." "No, actual federal? Yeah, I'll wait." 5 minutes later, he walked back, shaking his head. "They said stand down," he said, looking annoyed. "Said there might be complications." "Sorry, old-timer." He got back in his truck and drove away. I knew Karen Henderson was escalating. She wasn't just trying to find me, she was trying to physically remove my property. She was testing my limits. She didn't know I didn't have any limits when it came to protecting what was mine. I took photos of the tow truck's license plate. Another entry in the binder. Another brick in the wall I was building against her. She thought she was playing chess. But she didn't know I had already drawn the entire board. Karen Henderson's petty attacks, the mailbox, the paint, the tow truck, were a test. She was probing, trying to find my weak spots, seeing how far she could push before I broke. But Thomas Vance didn't break. He planned. Her attempts to bully me had only confirmed what I already suspected. She wasn't just arrogant, she was cornered. Her estates at Oakhaven was built on a foundation of greed and a lie. She had paved over a public road. She had built her mansion on stolen land. And I, Thomas Vance, was the only man who could prove it. It was time to stop reacting and start acting. It was time to draw the line. That evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I began my real work. Not in the city office, but in the field. I went to my garage, a place that smelled of sawdust and old oil, and pulled out my old friend, a Topkin GTS 210 total station. It was a surveyor's dream, a piece of equipment that looked like a small, yellow robotic telescope. It was old but reliable, precise to within millimeters. I also grabbed heavy-duty stakes, a sledgehammer, and a roll of high-visibility orange flagging tape. I waited until full dark, when the only sounds were crickets and the distant hum of Karen's mansion. I didn't want her security guards seeing what I was doing. I set up the total station in my front yard using the legally established benchmark pin near my porch. I calibrated it meticulously, aligning it to true north. Each measurement had to be perfect, unchallengeable. Then I turned its powerful laser beam towards Karen Henderson's property. According to her new plat, the marketing drawing, her property line swallowed up the old road. But according to the 1922 plat, the 40-foot wide public right-of-way known as Pine Street ran precisely where her pool deck and a significant portion of her west wing were now built. The laser beam, thin and red, cut through the night. I aimed it exactly where the eastern edge of Pine Street was supposed to be. The beam landed, stark and undeniable, right in the middle of her polished concrete. I walked slowly towards it, sledgehammer and stakes in hand. With the total station guiding me, I drove a new, steel-capped stake deep into the earth. I repeated the process, planting a series of legal monuments every 10 feet. Each one was marked with bright orange tape, a silent, glowing declaration in the darkness. These weren't just random markers. They were physical proof, placed with surveyor-grade accuracy. They were on her property, yes, but they marked public land she had illegally claimed. I repeated the process for the western edge of Pine Street. That line ran straight through her brand-new, 6-car garage. By the time I finished, a series of glowing orange markers traced a phantom street directly through her property. I took dozens of time-stamped photos, documenting the exact location of the new markers against her structures. Critical evidence. The next morning, armed with my new field data, I went to the Oakhaven County Planning and Zoning Office. It was a place I knew like the back of my hand, a place that smelled of old paper and stale coffee. "Thomas, good to see you," old George, the head clerk, chuckled. "Just doing some research, George," I said with a smile. I headed straight for the Henderson development files. They were thick, bulging with permits and plans. I was looking for one specific document, the as-built survey. This is a critical document. It's filed after construction to show exactly what was built and where it stands. It's supposed to confirm everything is legal. I found the one for Karen Henderson's personal residence. I opened it, and there it was. A line. A clear, distinct line marked Pine Street Row. But then, superimposed over that line, were the bold, dashed outlines of her swimming pool, her garage, and a large part of her main house. The surveyor had clearly, either by incompetence or corruption, drawn the illegal structures right over the public road. And here was the kicker, a handwritten note in the margins. It was small, in faded pencil. KV, instructed to proceed with revision. Karen Vance? No, Karen Henderson. She had personally instructed her surveyor to commit fraud. She hadn't made a mistake. She had given an order. I carefully photographed the document. Every detail, the official stamps, the dates, the small, damning handwritten note. This was the smoking gun. This was proof not just of trespass, but of willful, deliberate fraud. I closed the file, my heart thumping with the quiet satisfaction of a hunter. Karen Henderson thought she owned this town. She thought she could erase history and rewrite the map. But I, Thomas Vance, had drawn the original lines. The game was no longer about defending my mailbox. It was about exposing her entire fraudulent foundation. The next morning, I walked back into the Oakhaven County Planning and Zoning Office. The as-built survey I'd found was a clear sign of fraud. But to win, I didn't just need to prove what happened. I needed to prove why. I needed to prove intent. I needed the paper trail that led directly to Karen Henderson. I went to the front counter. The usual clerk, George, was gone. In his place sat a young woman in her early 20s, nervously trying to organize a mountain of blueprints. "Excuse me," I said quietly. She jumped, startled. "Oh, Mr. Vance. Sir, I'm sorry." "Good morning," I said with a calm smile. "I'm Thomas Vance." "I know who you are, sir," she said, her cheeks turning red. "I'm Sarah, the new records clerk." I just need to see the public correspondence file for the estates at Oakhaven. Sarah's smile faded. The Henderson file? She whispered. That's the one, I said. She bit her lip. 1 second. She disappeared into the back room and returned with a file folder. It was thin. Way too thin for a multi-million-dollar development. This is it, she said. Just the official applications and the final approvals. Where are the letters? I asked. The emails? The zoning questions? Sarah leaned in closer, her voice dropping. I think they're missing, Mr. Vance. Every time she comes in or her lawyers, things disappear. George told me to just keep my head down and not ask questions about that project. Before I could respond, the phone on her desk buzzed violently. The caller ID lit up, K. Henderson, private line. Sarah's face went white. She picked it up, her hand visibly shaking. Oakhaven Planning, this is Sarah. She didn't get to finish. I could hear the tinny, rapid-fire yelling from the earpiece. Yes, Mrs. Henderson. I'm looking at the permit. No, I'm not stupid. Yes, Mrs. Henderson, I'll page him right now. She hung up, her eyes wide with fear and anger, trying not to cry. She called me stupid, Sarah whispered, her voice cracking. She does this 3 times a day. I waited a moment. No one should be spoken to that way, Sarah. She looked at me, a new determination in her eyes. You're right, Mr. Vance. She can't just do this to everyone. She took a deep breath. The paper files are a mess. She probably had her lawyers clean them. But she's a bully. She's not smart. What do you mean? I asked. She demanded the county use a new digital submission portal for her entire project, Sarah said. She thinks when you delete an email, it's gone. It's not. The portal is run by the state. It keeps everything, every draft, every internal message. It's all backed up on a state server. She walked over to a computer terminal. I can't access those files, but she typed something into the user field, Vance, T, archived. Your old administrator account is still in the system, she said with a small, secret smile. It's not disabled. George, he never liked to fully delete things either. She typed in my old password. It still worked. The screen flickered. I had full administrator access. I'm going to go organize those blueprints, Sarah said, her voice shaking. I'll keep watch. Please, be quick. I sat down. This was it. I clicked on the Estates at Oakhaven project file. It was a digital mountain. I clicked the Correspondence tab, and then I saw it. A folder labeled Internal Deleted. My hand was steady. I clicked it. The screen filled with emails. I scanned the dates. And then I found it. It wasn't just a smoking gun. It was a blazing cannon. An email chain between Karen Henderson and David Miller, her first surveyor. The honest one. Email 1 from D. Miller Surveying. Subject. Urgent property line conflict, Mrs. Henderson. I must flag a serious, non-negotiable issue. The proposed site directly conflicts with Federal Access Route 7, Pine Street. We cannot legally build on it. Please advise. Email 2 from K. Henderson. Subject. Urgent property line conflict. This is a non-issue. It's a paper road. A typo. I am not losing my prime lot footage over a typo. Bury it. Pave it over. Make it go away. I'm not asking, I'm telling. Email 3 from D. Miller Surveying. Subject. Urgent property line conflict. Karen, I cannot legally sign off on this. This is fraud. It violates state and federal law. I would lose my license. We must redesign. Email 4 from Henderson. Subject. You're fired, then you're fired. I'll find someone who will. Consider your contract terminated. My blood ran cold. This was everything. It proved intent. It proved conspiracy. It proved she knew exactly what she was doing. I hit the print button. The old, dusty printer whirred to life. Sarah flinched at the front desk but didn't look back. The pages came out one by one. The digital proof. I gathered the papers, my hands trembling slightly with victory. I had it. I walked back to the front desk. Sarah was pretending to organize the blueprints. "Thank you, Sarah," I said quietly. "You've done a very brave thing today. For the whole town." She didn't turn around, but she nodded. "She can't just bully everyone, Mr. Vance," she whispered. I walked out of the planning office, the sun shining brightly. The papers in my briefcase felt heavy. They were the anchor that was about to pull Karen Henderson's entire empire to the bottom of the sea. The city council meeting was tomorrow night. The Oak Haven City Council meeting room wasn't built for drama. It was a low-ceilinged basement room smelling of stale coffee and old carpet. The council sat behind a dais that looked like it was from a high school cafeteria. But on this Tuesday night, the room was packed, standing room only. I arrived early, briefcase on my lap. The room was clearly divided. Karen's new, wealthy estates, residents on the right, annoyed and on their phones. The old Oak Haven residents on the left, nervous but determined. In the front row, flanked by lawyers, was Karen Henderson. She was the picture of corporate confidence, texting, "Here for a rubber stamp on Phase 2. She didn't even see me. In the back, I saw Sarah, the young records clerk. She looked terrified. I gave her a single, slow nod. She nodded back. "All right, let's settle down," said Mayor Thompson, banging his gavel. Agenda Item 5. The proposal from Henderson Development 4 Estates at Oak Haven, Phase 2. "Mrs. Henderson, the floor is yours." Karen gave a slick, 10-minute presentation full of buzzwords like synergy and sustainable luxury. She showed glossy pictures of a new golf course and more gray mansions. "With your approval," she finished, "we can continue to bring prosperity and elegance to Oak Haven." Her residents clapped politely. The council nodded, ready to vote. "Thank you," the mayor said. "Does the council have any?" "Mr. Mayor," I said, standing up. My voice cut through the room. Everyone turned. Karen's head snapped around, her face twisting in annoyance. "Mr. Vance," the mayor said, surprised. "This isn't a public hearing." "With respect, sir, I signed up for the public comment section." The mayor shuffled his papers. So you did. You have 3 minutes, Thomas." Karen Henderson let out a loud, impatient sigh and sat down, pointedly looking at her watch. I walked to the podium. "Good evening. My name is Thomas Vance. For 40 years, I was this county's chief land surveyor." That one sentence changed the air in the room. The council sat upright. The city attorney, Mr. Davies, looked up from his notepad. "I'm not here to talk about Phase 2, I continued. "I'm here to talk about Phase 1. Specifically, the gross illegalities of Mrs. Henderson's own residence." Karen shot out of her chair. "Mr. Mayor, this is slander, the personal attack. This has nothing to do with my proposal." "Please sit down, Mrs. Henderson," the mayor said, his brow furrowed. "Mr. Vance has the floor." I continued. "Mrs. Henderson has built a beautiful home. The only problem is she built her pool and her 6-car garage on public land." The room exploded. Shouts from the left, angry scoffs from the right. "Order," the mayor banged. "Mr. Vance, that is a very serious accusation." "It is," I said, "and I have brought my proof. If I may use the projector?" Karen's lawyer objected. "This is a procedural ambush." But Mr. Davies, the city attorney, shut him down. "It's a public meeting, counsel. The public has a right to present information. Proceed, Mr. Vance." I unplugged Karen's laptop and plugged in my own. The first image appeared, the 1922 original county plat map. "This," I said, "is the ancient piece of paper she referred to." I used a laser pointer, and it shows, right here, a 40-foot wide, protected public right-of-way, Federal Access Route 7, also known as Pine Street. I clicked to the next slide. And this is Mrs. Henderson's property as of 2 nights ago. The image from my total station appeared, showing the glowing red laser line cutting straight through her pool and garage. This is where Pine Street is. This is where her garage is. They are in the same place. A gasp went through the room. That's a fabrication. Karen sputtered. It's a survey, accurate to 3 millimeters, I said. But you don't have to take my word for it. I clicked again. This is the as-built survey, filed by your own team. The screen filled with the official, stamped document. The surveyor did note the right-of-way, but was instructed to draw the house over it. If you look closely, I zoomed in on the handwritten note. KV instructed to proceed with revision. Karen's face lost all its color. And in case there's any confusion, I said, clicking to the final slide. The email chain filled the screen. The one backed up on the state server. I read them aloud. From David Miller Surveying, Mrs. Henderson, I must flag a serious, non-negotiable issue. We cannot legally build on it. From K. Henderson, this is a non-issue. Pave it over. Make it go away. I'm not asking, I'm telling. From D. Miller Surveying, Karen, I cannot sign off on this. This is fraud. And the last one, from K. Henderson, you're fired. The room was dead silent. Even the estate's residents were staring at Karen, horrified. I turned off the laser pointer. This is not a clerical error, I said, my voice ringing with 40 years of authority. This is willful, documented, felony land fraud. She bullied an honest man out of a job, hired a corrupt one, and stole 40 feet of public land. And tonight, she has the gall to ask you for more. I picked up my briefcase. That is my comment. I walked back to my seat. Karen was on her feet, her face a mask of pure rage. He is lying, she shrieked. He hacked my private files. This is inadmissible. A criminal act. I'll have him arrested. I will sue this entire council. I will sue this town. That will be enough, Mrs. Henderson. It was Mr. Davies, the city attorney. He stood, adjusting his tie. Mr. Vance did not hack your files. Those emails are from the public-facing portal you demanded. They are public record. Our office, with help from a very brave city employee, verified their authenticity this afternoon. Sarah, in the back, let out a small sob of relief. Mr. Davies continued, his voice cold. The evidence shows you have committed multiple, willful violations, including conspiracy to commit fraud and illegal development of public land. My office will be insisting on a full investigation by the State Attorney General's office. Her lawyer grabbed her arm. Karen, say nothing. But she was beyond reason. You can't do this to me, she screamed. I have given millions to this town. I own you. I own this town. Mayor Thompson's face was hard as granite. He picked up his gavel. I am calling for a vote, he said, his voice booming, to deny the application for estates at Oakhaven, Phase 2, pending a full criminal investigation. Seconded. All in favor? Every hand went up. Bang. Next. The mayor said, not even looking at her. I call for a vote to issue an immediate stop work and demolition order for the illegal structures on Federal Access Route 7. Seconded. Every hand went up. Bang. Finally, I call for a vote to formally refer this entire matter to the State Attorney General for criminal prosecution. Seconded. Bang. Karen Henderson let out a raw, wounded, animal sound. Her face, once red with rage, was now sickly pale. She stumbled as her lawyer held her up. The room was silent as they walked her out. The estate's residents stared, horrified, watching their leader and their property values go up in flames. As she passed my aisle, her eyes met mine. They were no longer arrogant. They were empty. I just looked at her. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just watched her go. The moment the door closed, the room erupted. The old Oak Haven residents burst into applause. People were hugging, crying. Sarah was being congratulated by the mayor. I sat there for a moment, my heart finally slowing. Then I calmly closed my briefcase, stood up, and walked out into the cool, quiet night air. The line had been drawn. And tonight, the line had held. The morning after the city council meeting, a profound silence hung over the neighborhood. The constant, arrogant growl of Karen Henderson's construction, the hammering, the trucks, the shouting, was gone. I walked out onto my porch with my coffee, just as I did every day. But this morning, the air was different. It was still. Across the way, on the stolen land, bright yellow, "Stop Work Order" signs were plastered on every piece of equipment. A temporary chain-link fence, erected by the city, now surrounded Karen's half-built monument to herself. The entire estates at Oak Haven project was frozen in time, a graveyard of ambition. Karen Henderson's scream of "I own this town" had been the last, desperate gasp of a bully who had just run into a wall she couldn't tear down. The dominoes fell fast after that. The state attorney general's office, armed with the email chain and my survey data, filed a massive injunction. They didn't just halt Phase 2, they invalidated the permits for Phase 1. The corrupt surveyor who had signed off on Karen's fraud had his license suspended and, facing jail time, agreed to testify against her. The banks, seeing the words "federal fraud" and "criminal investigation," pulled their financing. Of it, Henderson Development, a company built on a mountain of leveraged debt, imploded overnight. But the final, fatal blow didn't come from the state. It came from her own victims. The other new homeowners in the estates, the ones who had sat on the right side of the council room, realized the truth. They had been sold multi-million-dollar properties based on fraudulent maps. Their own homes were, in many cases, also in violation. They realized their HOA president, the woman they had trusted, had built their community on a lie that now made their properties worthless. The class action lawsuit they filed was the final nail in the coffin. Karen Henderson's name, once a symbol of power in our town, became a whispered curse. She lost everything. Her company was dissolved. Her assets were frozen to pay the lawsuits. And her half-built mansion, the one she had stolen public land to build, was seized by the bank. 2 months later, another set of trucks arrived. Not construction trucks. Demolition trucks. I sat on my porch and I watched. I watched as a heavy, yellow excavator with a jackhammer attachment rolled onto the property. I listened to the thump, thump, thump as it tore apart her brand-new 6-car garage. I watched as they ripped out the rebar and concrete of her infinity pool, the very one she had planned for her back garden. It took them a week to reduce her dream to a pile of rubble and twisted metal. It took them one more day to haul it all away. When they were finished, all that was left was a 40-foot wide, 20-acre long scar of bare earth. The land was quiet again. Pine Street, after being paved over and buried, was finally free. 6 months after that, on a bright Saturday in spring, the trucks returned. But this time, they were different. They were pickup trucks owned by my old neighbors. Landscaping trucks from local businesses. They were filled not with concrete, but with sapling trees, bags of mulch, and wooden planks. The city, using funds from the seized Henderson assets, had officially reclaimed the land as Oak Haven Town Park. The other estates, residents, now free from Karen's HOA and desperate to rebuild their community, had voted to join the old town in the restoration project. The man organizing the volunteers, megaphone in hand, Mayor Thompson. The woman directing the planting of the new oak trees, her clipboard now held with confidence, Sarah, the young records clerk. She'd been given a promotion and a raise. She was now the acting head of county planning, and she smiled when she saw me. "Mr. Vance," she said, "we're not sure where to place the first bench." "I know just the spot," I said. We worked all day. The people from the new mansions and the people from the old bungalows, side by side, turning a scar of fraud into a line of hope. A year later, The path was complete. It's called the Pine Street Path. It's beautiful. It winds through the new growth trees, a wide, gravel path where families walk their dogs and children ride their bikes. It runs from the old main street, past my little bungalow, and all the way to the edge of the state forest. The new estate's houses are still there, but they're different now. Their fences are smaller. Their paint colors are varied. They're just houses, part of a neighborhood. I walk the path every morning. Sometimes people stop me. New residents, mostly. They've heard the story. They ask if it's true. Did a billionaire developer really try to steal a public road? Did she really threaten to bulldoze a federal landmark? I just smile and look at the path. The map was always there, I tell them. The line was always the line. People just had to be reminded where it was. My bungalow, my historic shack, still stands. It's not an eyesore. It's the anchor. It's the start of the trail. The town council put a small, bronze plaque on the gate, right next to the historic landmark sign. It doesn't tell the whole story. It doesn't mention the threats, the fines, or the late-night screams at my camera. It just says, the Pine Street Path in honor of Thomas Vance, County Surveyor, 1979 to 2019, who taught us that the truth of the land is more permanent than the plans of men, and who, when the time came, held the line. Karen Henderson had told me she owned this town. She thought her money and her rage could rewrite the world. She forgot that the world is built on a foundation. She forgot that before a single brick can be laid, someone has to draw the lines. I finished my coffee. The air was crisp, and the path, the truth, was laid out before me, clear for everyone to see. Thomas Vance proved that sometimes the quietest person in the room holds the most power, and that knowledge, when used correctly, is the ultimate weapon against a bully. Have you ever had to stand up to a powerful HOA, a bad boss, or someone like Karen who thought they were completely above the rules? Share your story in the comments below. And if you love stories about justice and seeing bullies get exactly what they deserve, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more. Thanks for watching.